Sawadee-ka! Welcome to Hot Thai Kitchen! Today I'm excited to do another Ingredient 101 video, and this time of a member of what I call the sauce trinity of Thai cuisine. Oyster sauce, and the other two being fish sauce and soy sauce, both of which have their own videos I'll link to below. So we'll tackle all the basic questions, of course, and we'll also do a taste test side by side of different brands. And what I'm most excited about, we're going to do a blind taste test of simple stir fries made with the cheap versus the premium oyster sauce, and we'll find out if it's actually worth the splurge. Let's get started. First, what is oyster sauce? Oyster sauce was actually discovered by accident by a man who forgot about a simmering pot of oyster soup. When he came back to it, he discovered that the resulting concentrated liquid was delicious, and that was the beginning of oyster sauce. This man turned out to be none other than the owner of Lee Kum-kee. So that reduced down oyster poaching liquid is the base of oyster sauce, or what they label oyster extract. So there are no like pureed oysters in it or anything like that. On top of that, there's seasonings like soy sauce and sugar, and the reason it's thick is because of added starch. Now, recipes vary greatly from brand to brand. How do you choose the best one? So this is what you're here for. What is the best oyster sauce on the market? So we're going to do taste tests side by side of the four that I can find in Vancouver, starting with Panda brand. This is a Lee Kum-kee basic oyster sauce that's most available as far as I can tell. Next, we have the Lee Kum-kee premium one, the Lady on the Boat brand. I don't know if that's the official term for it, but that's what's on the label. Price-wise, this is about double the price of the Panda brand. Next, we have the two Thai brands. This Mae Krua brand is the oyster sauce. Like, this is the symbol of oyster sauce in Thailand. Most homes will use this brand. This is what I regularly use. Finally, we have the Healthy Boy brand. Now, Healthy Boy, they're not known for oyster sauce. They're known more for their soy sauce, but it's there, it's available. Let's check it out. Moment of truth. Let's taste Panda. It's quite salty. I mean, what did I expect? It's oyster sauce. Quite salty. Let's see the Lady on the Boat. Oh, it is salty because, my God, it's oyster sauce, but it's significantly less so than the Panda one. It's almost more full-bodied, like there's more stuff happening. Definitely a much more complex flavor. This, I would say, if you wanted to use it straight up as like a drizzle over some steamed vegetables, which people do, definitely go with this one. If you're going to use oyster sauce straight up, the difference is obvious. Now, let's try it against the Thai brand. This is what I really want to know. Thai brand versus Lady on the Boat. Oh, it's so different. This tastes more soy sauce-ish to me and not as complex as Lady on the Boat. I am sad to say that my country's oyster sauce is not as good as the Lady on the Boat. Now I want to try the Thai brand against the Panda one. It's not as salty. The Panda is still saltier, but it's also sweeter. I would say comparable. I'm surprised this is not markedly better though. Finally, the thick oyster sauce, that's the thinnest one. This looks like it has a lot of starch. That's not good. It's very salty and really not that much else going on. Doesn't even taste like oyster sauce to me. Hi, it's Pi from the future interrupting for a second here. So it's been a few days actually since we filmed the tasting, but now that I've had time to simmer, I've got a better, more thorough takeaway for you. First, a recap of the ranking. Number one is definitely Boat Lady. Most delicious, most complex, the least salty. If you can afford to use this all the time, great. Otherwise, you can reserve it for dishes where it's the main seasoning. Panda and Mae Krua tie for second place for me, but it was kind of tricky because the flavor profiles are so different that you're kind of comparing apples to oranges. Mae Krua tastes much more reminiscent of soy sauce, and indeed, soy sauce is the second ingredient at almost 30%. So you really can't go wrong with either. It's a matter of preference. But if you want your dishes to taste exactly like they do in Thailand, then obviously you want to go with the Thai one. And finally, I love Healthy Boy soy sauces, but oyster sauce is not their forte. Previously, I always maintained that if oyster extract was listed as the first ingredient, then it's the better choice because ingredients are always listed in order of descending amounts. Now, this is very true of the two Lee Kum Kee brands. Boat Lady has it as the first ingredient and Panda oyster extract is the fourth. But Mae Krua also lists oyster extract as the first ingredient, and I don't think it tastes better than Panda. So I don't think you can apply this rule across different brands because I suspect that how brands define oyster extract is not the same. Because if you think about it, if the oyster extract is the oyster poaching liquid, then how much oysters are used in a given amount of liquid is going to affect the concentration, and then do they reduce this liquid by how much? There's just too many unknowns. But I do like to use protein content as a general indicator of how much oyster is actually in there. And this is obvious comparing our top and bottom performers. Boat Lady has 1 gram per tablespoon and Healthy Boy has 0, which is in line with the actual taste. For our middle ones, we've got 0.4 gram for Panda and about 0.5 for Mae Krua. Now, just want to note that it does say 1 gram on the label of Mae Krua, but the serving size is about double, so that's something to watch for. But it works out to be about the same, which is also in line with our taste test. But keep in mind that other ingredients, such as soy sauce, might also contain protein, so, use it as a general guideline. A final note about consistency. The two Lee Kum Kee brands are equally thick. The Thai ones are a little bit thinner, even though it says thick oyster sauce. Go figure. But not something I'd pay attention to because the thickness comes from added starch, which does not impact the flavor. All right, back to the tasting. Now let's look at the vegetarian oyster sauce and see how close they stack up to real oyster sauce. FYI, they will not say vegetarian oyster sauce. They'll say something like vegetarian stir-fry sauce or mushroom vegetarian sauce. But if you're looking for an oyster sauce substitute, if it looks like oyster sauce and the consistency is kind of like oyster sauce, chances are it's meant to be an oyster sauce substitute, okay? So let's try. This is a Lee Kum Kee one. Oh, it's very salty, probably as salty as the Panda, but it's got a really sharp acidity to it. It's not as sweet. Yeah, it's a more acidic flavor. I mean, close enough. Now, the Healthy Boy. It's not bad. I like this one better than the thick oyster sauce. I would have no problem using either of these. It tastes close enough to the real oyster sauce that I think if you're vegetarian, I wouldn't hesitate using either of these at all. By the way, ingredient-wise, vegetarian oyster sauce is basically soy sauce with water, sugar, salt, and mushroom flavor added. So when you taste oyster sauce straight up, the differences are pretty obvious. And if you're going to use it straight up, go for the good one. But when it's in a stir fry, how much of a difference does it really make? Does it justify the extra cost? We're going to find out. I have made 2 identical Chinese broccoli stir fry. I have a recipe for this. It's great. I'll link to it below. The main ingredient in the sauce is oyster sauce, but it also has, soy sauce, a little sugar, white pepper, just like most other stir fries do, so it's a really great candidate for this test. Now, one is made using the Panda brand sauce, and the other is made using the premium Lady on the Boat. I don't know which is which. We're gonna find out if I can tell the difference. Get a piece of stem and a piece of leaf. Make sure it's got lots of sauce on it. Okay. I mean, it's so good. I just want to polish it off. Here we go. The other one. This is saltier, but it might be that it was also a bigger bite. So I'm going to go back and forth a little. This is better. Yes, this is better. There seems to be more complexity. I'm really nervous now because I might discover that this is the Panda. Let's find out. Yes, I still got it, people. It is the Boat brand. I labeled the bottom with a B. It makes a difference. It really, really does. Like it was nerve-wracking, but I had no question, no doubt in my mind that this was the better tasting one. It's more complex. There seems to be more going on. It's more, you know, if this were wine, this would be more full-bodied, where this is more like the lighter, like everyday drinking wine, but this is like the one you want to sip and savor, you know what I mean? So yes, ultimate verdict, totally worth the splurge if you're using it in something that uses oyster sauce as a main ingredient, even if it's not the only ingredient. And before I go, a couple of tips. How do you store oyster sauce? You absolutely, once opened, want to store these in the fridge. The starch thickener is what makes this much more perishable than fish sauce or soy sauce, which will never really spoil at room temperature, but this will actually get moldy. How do I know? Because it's happened to me before. If you can use a bottle up in a month, it'll be fine outside, but the label does say refrigerate. However, once you refrigerate these, they become super thick and really annoying to get it out, like trying to get ketchup out of a glass bottle, okay? So my advice to you is when you buy it, when it's still at room temperature, you transfer it into a squeeze bottle like this, and this will reduce so much frustration when you're actually using it for cooking. Asian auntie money saving tip: when you have just a little bit left, you think you can't get out anymore, you put in a little water and then you shake it around and you get everything off of the side, and you can still make a whole nother dish with the stuff that's stuck to the side of the bottle. Do not waste a drop. So I hope you found that interesting. I would love to hear from you. What is your oyster sauce brand of choice? Do you have a couple? Do you only use one? Share with us in the comments below. A special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters who help support the show. And if you want to know what that's all about, how to watch my videos ad-free, I'll put the link in the description below. Thank you as always for watching, and I will see you next time for your next delicious Thai meal.